Welcome back to Digital Perspectives, everybody. You know what time it is. It is Mickey B. Fresh time in the house. Mickey B., how are you today?
I'm doing great, Brad. Glad to be back on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. It is always a pleasure. And I want to give a shout out to Dave Cryptopoulos. I had to reschedule our Friday morning last minute because I had an appointment that we just couldn't get out of. But at any rate, we will be back next Friday. Friday is an amazing day with Cryptopoulos. And sorry for those that missed it, but keep a lookout for Fridays with co-host Cryptopoulos right here on the show. So today we got Mickey B. Fresh. Now, Mickey B., we've had some big news, and I have been excited to get you on here so you can react to this, and then we can start to peel back what looks like the layers that are being revealed to us of how this new infrastructure, this new layout that now includes banks from the OCC. Talk to me about this a little bit.
Absolutely. This was huge news. I mean, coming out that banks could now custody digital assets also means they could use the digital assets. So I'm speaking with Jerry Hall the other day in the morning, and we were talking how that this opens up the use of digital assets for the banks. And now when they're going to create products for their customers who are going to be able to buy digital assets from their platform, either they're going to create that trading side themselves or they're going to license another trading. I don't see them going directly to a Coinbase or a Binance to buy those. They're going to buy from the prime brokerages behind there. And now they're going to need a custodial wallet for their customers to use. And you're going to need to have all that authentication, the biometrics, the verifying of the credentials. And that's where I see Polysign coming in with that custody that set up an infrastructure for the banks and regulated financial institutions to use that's ready. And Zgon has tweeted about it, that these vendors and partners already exist.
I was blown away by that Ryan Zgon tweet. I was like, wow, all of a sudden he found his password to Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exciting.
He's almost giddy.
Yeah, exactly. You could sense it. You could really sense it. And so are we. And believe me, I mean, I am very grateful for the efforts he has put forth for this entire crypto space, as well as Ripple and XRP. And I tell you something, looking at how excited he was, I noticed that there was some more motion by the CFPB, the FDIC, filing for protection for virtual asset service providers. I mean, this is really going somewhere. And, Brian Brooks from the OCC, who released the information about the decision to allow banks to charter or to custody, digital assets, has said that he's going to release a charter in the fall. And that charter in the fall is going to be even more detailed and more specific about exactly what can happen in this space with digital assets. That's exciting.
Now, it's very exciting. And one thing that charter will do, so say we know BitGo owns a trust custodian, Coinbase owns a trust custodian, Standard Custody, the subsidiary of Polysign, is a trust custodian, but they're not a national chartered bank yet. They don't have FDIC. They can't take bank deposits. But once Brian Brooks puts through this national bank charter, they will have that same level playing field as the banks then.
Yeah.
Which really brings it to an interesting climax to where we'll get at, where they'll all be on the same level playing field.
Well, you make such a great point. And the thing that really excites me leading off of your point here is that, I feel like we're moving into that place, Mickey, where, you're getting ready to see a lot of acquisitions and a lot of mergers, if you will, especially the acquisition part. I don't think that 4,700 plus banks in the United States are going to sit back quietly and just let the coin exchanges just go on ho-hum as usual, just another day in the crypto space. They're about to get bought up, aren't they?
Absolutely. And we're going to see the institutional side of the market really come into its own because we don't have that right
That's
now.
right.
We basically just have the retail side, and we will see some consolidation on the retail, that's no doubt. But we're going to see, for example, SBI VC is not live on a spot exchange. BAC's not live on a spot exchange. RSX is not live on a spot exchange. Fidelity is not live on a spot exchange. So that institutional side has yet to fully develop a spot market. But one thing we do have, we're seeing more of these prime brokerages and custodians build the infrastructure for that institutional market to come together. And then that'll probably be where the main source of the liquidity will come from. But each bank is still going to have to, or if it's not a bank, an investment bank like a Goldman or Morgan Stanley or an E-Trade are going to have that interface and that trading platform that then connects them to that institutional market and pool of liquidity.
You know, you're absolutely right. And what we're seeing is this plumbing getting connected and hooked up, whether it's the buy and sell side interface that's going to be on the front of banks or the custody on the back end, like you're discussing here. You know, what really gets me about this is because you can see them literally hooking the plumbing together, and the regulatory body, the OCC, playing a big, part in this for the banks themselves. I know everybody. Look, the first knee-jerk reaction is, well, the banks are getting into this. We're about to get paid. I agree with that. I think that's coming, and I think it's more obvious now than it ever has been before in the 3+ years I've been in the space. But when I think of them getting connected to the custody of a Polysign and getting connected to the front face of another platform that's going to do the buy and sell side and convert to stable coins and all of this business for them, and all of these plug-and-play solutions are here, ready to go, basically, the world of crypto is about to be forever transformed and never going to look the same again, isn't it, Mickey?
I agree. We're going to see the bridging of the capital markets with the crypto markets now.
Right.
Because they just got the green light. I mean, it's huge news that they just got the green light here to be able to transact and custody in these crypto assets. And now we're going to see the merging and the bridging of these two. And now that's what Polysign was created for, to bridge these two marketplaces together. And that's going to roll into its CBDCs, tokenization. It's going to all then basically like jump off at one point when we start that flywheel start going of just the overall markets. We're going to start seeing things happen fast. But this was really like a spark, I guess you could see, that the banks, hey, you better get in this game or you're going to get left behind.
I completely agree. I think you're putting it over the fence. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And it's exciting because, like you said, there's an institutional side that's about to launch. I want to take this opportunity to remind everybody that they relaxed the Volcker rule for banks this year, and how that allows them to now invest their private money into hedge funds and mutual funds and things like that, and things of a little riskier background set than they were allowed previously. And this could be exactly the back door for the banks to invest in these hedge funds, Mickey, to then see the hedge funds put the money in a portion of their portfolio. Look, maybe it's 1% of the portfolio for the hedge fund. Maybe it's 3%. It's not going to be the whole thing, right? But they're going to put a percentage into these hedge funds, and this allows the banks to be able to take. Look, here's the other thing. Banks just got a permission to custody digital assets. Well, if they got it to custody for us, then they've got permission to custody for themselves, right?
Absolutely.
And there's the other side to this thing, is with the relaxing of the Volcker rule, they can now invest through a third-party hedge fund, and they can invest a portion into crypto at the same time. And they're in this game the way an investor's in this game. Talk to me about that.
Exactly. So the fact that they're going to be able to now create financial products that institutional investors and retail can invest in, there's going to be that side for the everyday cryptos. But now we have, switching over to like RippleNet a little bit here, where we have a whole payment network of market takers, right? So ODL, you have a bunch of market takers coming in, swallowing up the liquidity. Now that's where those hedge funds and those FX providers and banks can create that financial marketplace on the back end, because you have the market takers Now you bring in all the market makers creating all these financial products, and a lot of it's, since it's on ledger, is going to be based off DeFi products, but in an institutional way with smart contracts. And that's where I see XRP as having an advantage from your Bitcoins and Ethereums, because you have this payment network of market takers coming, mixing with a financial marketplace of lending, credit, borrowing, all the great stuff that comes with DeFi. You have the demand from the market takers. And that's going to be really interesting to see, mixed with then, like you said, all the traditional investment vehicles.
Yeah, it is remarkable. You make a very good point. So speaking of Bitcoin and Ethereum, Bitcoin was just recently found in a I think it was a federal court case, if I'm not mistaken, to be a currency. Now, Mickey,
I find it hard that the U.S. courts are deeming something that's mined in China to be currency in the U.S. Does
this feel a little odd?
Feels a little odd. That was a very interesting court case, though. It kind of like backed the courts into a corner to where, for them to win the court case, the prosecutors, they had to deem it money, because he was trying to say he was not a money transmitter. But still, a federal ruling is a federal ruling.
That's right. And
right?
and I think at the end of the day, to your point, the article really expressed too that I read that, if you're in DC, you're going to need to have a money service provider's license in order to operate, because it is money, and that's the long and short of that outcome for that particular instance of the case. But I will say that, it did bring up a thing, and I spoke about it earlier in the video, but I want to float this out here as speculation, because Bitcoin is mined, and it is mined in China. They may come up with a system where they cap gains the mined coins, and then they're placed on, let's say, the XRP ledger, and then it's money. And then if you're going to actually use it as a medium of exchange and transact with it, you need to have a money service license. The reason I speculate on this and I bring this up is because look at the structure that I just laid out based off of a federal court decision and the OCC granting banks custody access to digital assets. I see, look, the Bitcoin maxis of the world have said it a million times. They're going to say it a million more. You can't stop the technology. I agree with them. I've never disagreed with them. I've always said if they wanted to stop you, they would regulate you into out of existence is what they would do. And what I see here is they actually looks from the outside in the early onset of this that they've regulated them into existence, but there's going to be some rules for Bitcoiners out here. And I think we've yet to quite see what they are, but I really do feel like something's coming, because for them to make a decision like that, and maybe that was just some, decision that ends up being way off base and it's overruled later somewhere, but I don't see it. I see them doing something that includes Bitcoin and getting some kind of cohesion with the markets coming together like the XRP ledger. Your thoughts at all?
Well, the one thing is the miners who validate and sign the transactions are anonymous. And I think that's going to be a problem when it comes to regulations. Now, this is where the permission ledgers and the proof of stake networks have an advantage over proof of work, because it's known who the validators are.
There you go.
They can be verified. They're reputable, either institutions, businesses, tech companies, universities. They have a reputation at stake. And sometimes they're involved in multiple ledgers, where the miners are all profit motivated, and that value that they mine is going out of the network. It's not staying within the network either. It's going to pay Chinese electric bills.
Yeah.
Now,
exactly.
The fact that their credentials aren't known and they're completely anonymous in another country, and they're signing transactions of billions of dollars going over a network, that's a problem. And that's a problem that's going to be addressed at some point. I can't see it staying completely anonymous for moving billions of dollars throughout a network.
I completely agree. And that's why I feel like something's going to regulate itself to a place where you're either messing with something that's considered a la the dark web, or you're on the legitimate market infrastructure here. Well,
it also comes back then to, like you've been saying, the travel rule. You're going to have the identity of where these assets came from and where they're going to.
That's
so
right.
Those regulations there, you're going to have to put digital identity and credentials onto these networks, and they're going to have to be put into the wallet, and they're going to have to be put into the private key, and you're going to have to tie all that together. And I think that's something really big that's being overlooked in the industry right now, or in the community, is that our credentials and our identity, like what PayID is doing, is going to need to be tied into our wallets and the transactions, so the exchanges and custodial wallets know where the assets are coming from. Now, if you're a completely anonymous network, how do you know where they came from?
Well, no, it's an excellent point, and it's never going to wash. That dog don't hunt. They're never going to allow that to happen that way. It's just not. And I mean, and listen, I'm a libertarian. I'd love to see all kinds of things decentralized and the lack of this or whatever. But you know what? But the truth is, at the end of the day, they're never going to allow the world to speaking of the banks, they're never going to, or the governments as well, they're never going to allow something to be developed technology wise or anything that makes them irrelevant. They're never going to allow it. And what they're doing is using the regulation and the regulatory process to develop a framework. Then they're going to adopt certain ledgers, I believe the XRP ledger, ILP, obviously, and these ledgers will become a virtual framework in which you will participate in. Otherwise, it's like being on the dark web. End of story. That's it. You know, we're not going to accept the transaction until we know where it came from and everything about it, right?
Exactly. So they're not regulating the actual blockchains themselves. They're regulating the outside of it, but it forces the technology within the blockchains to evolve to meet these regulations. So how is enterprises going to be able to use the Bitcoin blockchain or the Ethereum blockchain if they can't comply with these outside regulations like the travel rule and others?
Yeah. And I would, go ahead.
The ledgers that are permissioned but open have the biggest advantage, because they're able to, like the XRP ledger and some other proof of stakes, to make amendments and add innovation to them and evolve with the regulatory framework and with the new technology enhancements. So by being able to pivot like that continuously makes it easier for those networks to have a long-term success than something like Bitcoin that is just, it is what it is. This is it. There's no changing or moving that ship. It's in a straight line, and there's nothing you could do to change that course, really.
Well said. Well said. So now let's go back to the custody side here and compliance. And we have a clip that you shared just a short time ago, actually, on Twitter of the head of compliance for Polysign. Can we play that clip, Mickey?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, let me pull this up for everybody
Put
here.
it up. So this is Antoinette Ogorman, and she was head of compliance at HSBC and Union Bank, which is a subsidiary of MUFG, and then Promontory Financial, which is tied in with BNY Mellon, and then she moved over to Ripple as head of compliance. She dealt with the whole FinCEN fine in 2015, 2016, and then in 2017, 18, she moved over to Polysign, head of compliance, and she's speaking here at a IMF presentation in 2018 on cryptocurrencies and CBDCs.
Very good. I'm going to let this spin. You may or may not hear the audio, Mickey, just to let you know. So it's a 58-second clip. But if you don't hear it, don't panic. It is playing. So here we go.
Okay.
Multisig software solutions to hold their funds. They want to have a qualified custodian to protect and safeguard their assets. Central banks wishing to issue their own digital currency will have to give serious consideration to custody solutions. How are they going to maintain and safeguard those funds from attack? You need a sophisticated multi-sig ceremony, and when I say a ceremony, I really do mean it is a ceremony amongst many, many people with a very sophisticated key generation mechanism. It's not a trivial matter. And possibly maybe using something kind of escrow solution that Ripple, similar to the one Ripple announced in late 2017. So many people with a very sophisticated key generation mechanism. It's not a trivial matter. And possibly maybe using something kind of escrow solution that Ripple, similar to the one Ripple announced in late 2017.
And there it is. Were you able to hear that, Mickey?
No, I wasn't, unfortunately.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I've watched it a few
Yeah,
times.
I know you.
remember.
Yeah, you know what it was. So, I mean, just like the mechanism that Ripple used back in 2017. Well, let's talk about what they used.
Well, multisig is important, especially when you think about like the Fed, who's going to issue CBDCs. Now, is one person going to be in charge of that, or are you going to have a multi-sig once more of the digital dollars issued? So you could have Powell, Trump, Mnuchin, all have to have, kind of like she said, a ceremony to release those assets into the,
yes,
because just as crypto has some of these features, CBDCs are going to have the same functions, features, security risks that are going to have to be taken care of, and custodian wallets they're going to have that security on them, just like you do crypto. And they might have the ability to roll back certain things, but you're going to have billions of transactions running through these. And what she's talking about there is that was in 2018, so we could get an idea that what she's talking about is along the lines of what Polysign is doing. So it sounds to me a lot like they're involved with the CBDC aspect here, especially after seeing this is an hour-long clip. You can look on our LinkedIn. And it really seems like they're tied in with the CBDCs as well as capital markets and crypto.
Well, this is remarkable because, I mean, the CBDCs, again, if we look at the movement that's happening now from regulation, we know that even the House and Senate have been having major talks about the digital dollar development with Chris Giancarlo and Daniel Gorfine, and both of them are welcome on this show anytime. I'd love to have them. But aside from that, like I said, this stuff looks to me like it is just coming together between the private and public sector, the regulation, the firms that have been out here taking root. I mean, look, I know you and I know this, but for the benefit of anybody in the audience that may not, Polysign is really created by David Schwartz and Arthur Brito, and everything they've created with the technology of that, the same people that were involved with Ripple and XRP, the ledger, right? So this is a key fact. I mean, people have to understand that what we're looking at now is, how long have we been listening to people tell us that it's, XRP is a crap coin, right? It's not going anywhere. It's never going to go over $1, blah, blah, blah. All the things they say. But the reality is you'd have to believe that a company like Polysign, which has the ability to scale into the trillions for the institutional side, created by Arthur Brito and David Schwartz, you'd have to believe that, in your mind that Ripple, XRP, this is not going to go anywhere, but somehow the same people that worked on that got Polysign, and that's going to serve the entire banking world and the institutional world. I mean, I just feel like something's big coming. Exactly. I really, really do, man.
Now, they've been building this infrastructure for years. So quick little tidbit I thought was cool. I threw it in that tweet, was that Polysign was originally called by Arthur Brito Interledger FX in 2017 when it first started.
Very interesting.
So that's when they first hired the CTO. So really, if you think of when Polysign really got going, it was 2017, not 18. So now for 3 years, they've been working on this, which I think is a vertical of different solutions. They say there's the Polysign blockchain, which is, if it's a third generation, think of like Hedera Hashgraph. It's going to be that level of transactions going to handle. And it's going to have that type of modularity to it. Now, going by the resume that we saw of the girl who worked there, Jessie something, it shows that Polysign could fetch transactions from the Ripple ledger, which is the XRP ledger, and then bring them back to that. So, and using microservices, it sounds an awful lot when you hear interledger FX, like trading and data as much as it is custody. Now, we know the ledger is a real-time gross settlement FX system. It's built into the protocol.
Right.
That XRP Ledger and Stellar are really the only two that have currency exchanges and settlement capabilities built into their ledgers and have gateways, or Stellar calls it anchors, that are on and off ramps to Ledger, where Bitcoin, Ethereum are more walled garden payment networks. It was meant to be used either Bitcoin to Bitcoin or Ethereum with its own ERC20 tokens. Now, the Ledger, these gateways were used years ago, and they had to pull back on them because they couldn't authenticate all the users, the credentials, verify that they actually had the assets that they were issuing on the ledgers. Now you bring in something like Polysign, and you match it to everything David Schwartz has been saying about second layer consensus and all that, and you really start connecting the dots here, and you see that Polysign is an integral part of what they're building. So going back to what you said, they're building all this infrastructure for this future financial system that's being put in place, because we're transitioning from an account-based system to a token-based system. So if you're going to ramp up ODL, but you still have an account-based system transitioning to token-based with all these CBDCs, that's why they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, but they're building for the future. So some people might say, crap coin, oh, it's not moving now. There's no development on the ledger. There's plenty of development. It's all happening for the infrastructure that's coming, not for what's now, not for your walled garden on Ethereum or your old account-based system like Swift. It's for this future system to merge the capital markets, tokenization, CBDCs with the crypto. And I see XRP and RippleNet as the payment network already entrenched in that spot to where they're the ideal protocols to be used in a global payment and cross-border, and then build a financial marketplace on the back end of.
Oh, that's so
and
well
you have
said.
the currency exchange built into the protocol. So you have everything, payment network, currency exchange, financial system, and custody. I mean, it's ideally set up for when these banks and financial institutions come over. It's like, here we go, all regulated vendors, security protocols, interoperability, ready to go. But Interledger is just one layer of the interoperability. And if we could touch on that after.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely want you to talk about Cactus and highlight that, because we're going to get into that in a later video too. I know we're not far from wrapping, but you just make some incredible points here. And I wanted to ask you a question, and I've forgotten it just now, and I forget what it is, but it'll come back to me as soon as we finish, I guarantee you. Okay, so, no, everything here is exciting. I mean, it's amazing. You know, when you're looking at the, you know, we're on the edge of it. We're watching this happen.
Exactly.
I have to be honest. I mean, yeah, I even said this morning or yesterday, I can't remember when, but in the last day or so, that, you know, we're not far away from, you know, the internal documents and all of that stuff is just public knowledge. And the NDAs start wearing off, and we start seeing what's happening. Now, look, this may be over the course of the next year to 3 years. You know what I mean? But we're in that moment. I mean, banks have just been granted the ability to custody digital assets. So
it's amazing. US 2 first.
Yes, US 2 first. And I mean, and a reminder, what you talked about with SBI earlier, that this is a global market. So who's going to jump on the other side of the world? Is it going to be SBI? I mean, who's going to not be outdone here? Because isn't this about competition and getting this stuff going?
Absolutely. It's about competition. You hear what she said in that video, how all these exchanges have their own private databases and all the transactions are just happening offline. And then we see that all the institutionals besides LMAX haven't really gone live yet. You got to think, well, those exchanges are probably going to operate in a different way if she's saying how those are unregulated and how they happen all off-chain and on their own private database. The institutionals could be built on DLT base too. I mean, we haven't really heard much about that, but you would think they would be built for the future. Right?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest points and takeaways about this talk you and I've had today is that this market infrastructure that we're seeing is not for today, it's for the future. And people need to understand that. So when you look at price and you don't see it moving, you know, it's because everything that's happening is for the future. Now, I'm sure that there are people who are like, well, I don't want to hear that. I want to get rich today. Well, no kidding. Who doesn't, right? But
here's the thing. Do you want $5 in 2025? Or do you want $500? Do you want $5 in 2020? Or do you want $500 in 2025.
Exactly. Well said, man. All right. So give us a brief overview of this cactus, and then let's wrap this thing, Mickey.
Okay. So just a quick brief. We'll do another video that will go more in depth on this.
Yes.
But first, just Hyperledger Cactus is basically the interoperability solution above Interledger layers. So this is a plugin backed. Now, this was created by Accenture and Fujitsu. And now they push this through. Now, we always talk about quarter, but really, in reality, Hyperledger, Ripple is a member of Hyperledger and a partner of Hyperledger. And they have a whole product, a whole project that went through the whole standards body and got approved, which is Quilt, which is an enterprise-grade connector for Interledger. Right. Now, Hyperledger Cactus is backed by Accenture. Now, this is a plugin that has business logic. So what this will do is it'll allow a CBDC built on Hyperledger Fabric to be able to communicate with a group of federated nodes on the XRP ledger. So this would allow CBDCs then to be locked up on the private CBDC ledger and then moved over to the XRP ledger. Those two federated groups could now communicate with each other, and vice versa. XRP could be locked up and then issued and minted on the other private ledger. So it allows this, like, I look at it as like a tunnel between the two ledgers. So instead of a bridge, it's like a tunnel. They could communicate and authenticate each other through smart contracts. So this creates that type of interoperability that you were talking about, where that they could move the assets like this onto and off different ledgers. They don't physically move off the ledger, but they get locked up and then minted on the other one. So you could see how, if you're a currency exchange protocol, it would be perfect then for all the CBDCs then to run through there, if you're especially doing cross-border payments. Because a lot of these CBDCs, they're going to be built on private ledgers. Now, this allows the Quorum DLT, Corda DLT, and the Hyperledger DLT to all interoperate with each other and communicate with each other to actually have business logic between them at smart contracts. And it also could connect to, and it connects to permission ledgers. But what's interesting about it is Accenture has proprietary software that then is custom made to go to different ledgers. So as much as it's an open project, you could implement your own proprietary software for certain ledgers, say to the XRP ledger, say to Ethereum, public ledger, or even Bitcoin. It can connect. So basically, this is the layers above Interledger. So the fact that Accenture is backing this, I think is something we need to keep an eye on, because they're an investor in Ripple and they're a partner for like 5-6 years now. So a lot of the proof of concepts that Ripple did have been with Accenture at the Bank of England, Project Stella. You know, Interledger is the value transfer interoperability. This is the business logic interoperability.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Mickey. And it really does come down to that interoperability, and whatever makes everything work together is going to benefit not only itself, but the entire system as well. And it's, it's just so obvious, but it becomes more obvious now when you see this kind of grand step. I mean, this is like the first step on the moon for crypto right here. I mean, this literally is a giant leap for mankind to bring the banks into this and to start to really legitimize this market. I mean, this is something you're not going to see for 5 lifetimes, what we're looking at right now.
It's so true. And I got to remember, they've been doing proof of concept since 2015 and 16 with these central banks.
Yep.
So they were the first ones in there. So anyone who says, oh, well, they could use any asset. Well, who has the payment network globally already built up? And that's one of the most important infrastructures, because they have the protocols already behind the firewall of the banks.
Absolutely, man. Well said. Mickey B. Fresh, let's wrap it right there. And I can't wait to get back together. Mickey B. and I try to do a show at least once every couple weeks and just grab the latest stuff that's happening and really try to dive down on that information and see how it's coming together. Right here, this is a real moment in time. This is a history-making moment, and I couldn't be more glad that we get a chance to get together and talk about this, Mickey. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
For being here.
This is only the beginning, in my opinion. I think we're going to see a lot of more announcements, and once it gets going, it's going to get going fast. So I think that's one thing we prepare for. It's been slow, and we've made it through it, but once it starts get going, be prepared that it's going to happen fast. So we'll have plenty of videos to do.
Absolutely, and I can't wait. Mickey, thank you so much, my friend. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk offline, brother.
Yes. Thank you, Brad. Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Absolutely. Take care, my friend.
Everyone.
You too.